The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumbling sound that echoed through the vast hall. Kyle Morrison stepped forward, his black diplomatic uniform crisp and formal against the alien architecture that surrounded him. Behind him walked Lisa Grant, her military bearing unmistakable even in civilian clothes, and Dr. Peter Young, clutching a datapad filled with information about human civilization. The chamber stretched out before them like a cathedral built for giants. Crystalline seats rose in tiers around a central speaking area, each one designed for different alien physiologies. Some seats glowed with internal light for energy-based beings, others were filled with specialized atmosphere for species that breathed methane or sulfur compounds. The air itself shimmered with translation fields that would convert their words into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. Kyle had dreamed of this moment for years. Earth's first formal request to join the Galactic Federation represented the culmination of decades of careful diplomacy and preparation. Humanity had been observing galactic politics from the sidelines for nearly a century. Ever since first contact with a Luminari scout ship had revealed that Earth was just one small world in a galaxy teeming with intelligent life. As the human delegation reached the center of the chamber, Kyle looked up at the assembled representatives. The Vortanian Empire occupied the largest section of seats, their crystalline bodies reflecting the chamber's lights in prismatic displays. Commander Zithkar sat at their center, his forearms folded across his chest in what Kyle had learned was a gesture of barely contained impatience. The Vortanians controlled nearly a quarter of the galaxy's habitable worlds and considered themselves the natural leaders of galactic civilization. To their left sat the insectoid Krexthal delegation, their compound eyes glittering as they watched the humans with what might have been curiosity or hunger. The Krexthal were known for their aggressive expansion policies and their belief that weaker species should serve stronger ones. Their queen, Vexandra, clicked her mandibles in a rhythm that the translation field interpreted as mild amusement. The energy-based Luminari occupied a section of the chamber that glowed with contained plasma fields. Their representative, a being that called itself Bright Star of Ancient Wisdom, pulsed with colors that conveyed skepticism and condescension. The Luminari were among the oldest species in the galaxy, having achieved spaceflight when most other civilizations were still discovering fire. Finally, the reptilian Sorok delegation watched from their heated section of the chamber. General Vectar's yellow eyes fixed on Kyle with predatory interest. The Sorok had built their empire through conquest and subjugation, believing that might made right in all aspects of galactic politics. Kyle cleared his throat and began to speak. His words immediately translated into the communication methods of every species present. Honored representatives of the Galactic Federation, I am Ambassador Kyle Morrison of Earth. I come before you today to formally request that humanity be granted full membership in this august body. The response was immediate and devastating. Laughter erupted from multiple sections of the chamber, though it took many different forms. The Vortanians' laughter sounded like chiming crystals, while the Krexthal produced a harsh, chittering noise. The Luminaries' amusement manifested as rapid color changes, and the Sorok let out deep, rumbling growls that conveyed derision. Commander Zithkar rose from his seat, his forearms spreading wide in a gesture of theatrical disbelief. Did this primitive just request equality with civilized species? His voice carried clearly through the chamber's acoustics, and fresh waves of laughter greeted his words. These soft-skinned creatures have barely learned to leave their single planet, and already they believe themselves worthy of sitting among beings who have ruled the stars for millennia. Lisa Grant felt her jaw clench, but she kept her expression neutral. Years of military training helped her maintain composure even as insults rained down around them. She had seen combat on 3 different worlds during humanity's limited conflicts with pirates and raiders, but nothing had prepared her for this level of systematic humiliation. Dr. Yang stepped forward slightly, raising his datapad. If I may address the concerns about our technological development, Queen Vexandra's chittering cut him off. Concerns? Little mammal, you misunderstand the situation. We do not have concerns about your technology because you have none worth Our attention. Your fastest ships crawl between stars like insects, your weapons are barely more advanced than throwing rocks, and your understanding of the universe is so limited that you still use primitive fusion reactors for power. Bright star of ancient wisdom pulsed with colors that the translation field rendered as patronizing amusement. Young species, your civilization has existed for mere thousands of years. We Luminari were exploring the galaxy when your star was still forming from cosmic dust. The very idea that you could contribute anything meaningful to galactic civilization is quaint, but ultimately absurd. General Vectar stood, his massive frame casting shadows across the lower seats. The Sorak Empire has observed your species for decades. You fight among yourselves constantly, you poison your own world with industrial waste, and you cannot even achieve unity among your own kind. What possible value could such a chaotic and primitive species bring to our Federation? Kyle tried to maintain his diplomatic composure, but the assault on humanity's character and capabilities continued relentlessly. Representative after representative stood to voice their opinion, and each one was more dismissive than the last. The thermal sect called humans barely evolved primates, while the crystalline hegemony referred to them as a minor curiosity with delusions of grandeur. The systematic humiliation continued for over an hour. Every aspect of human civilization was mocked and dismissed. Their art was called primitive, their science was labeled as backward, their military was described as laughable, and their diplomatic efforts were characterized as the desperate attempts of a species trying to gain protection from their betters. Lisa watched Kyle's face throughout the ordeal, seeing the careful diplomatic mask beginning to crack. She knew he had spent years preparing for this moment, studying galactic law and custom, learning the complex protocols that governed interspecies relations. None of it mattered now, as the assembled aliens treated humanity like children playing. At being adults, finally, the president of the Galactic Council, an ancient being from the ethereal collective, called for order. The chamber fell silent as the ghostly figure began to speak in tones that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. The request of the human species has been heard and considered. The verdict of this council is unanimous. Humanity will be granted observer status within the Federation, with the right to watch our proceedings but no voice in our decisions. This status may be reviewed in 500 years, provided the human species demonstrates significant advancement in technology, philosophy, and civilization. Kyle felt something cold settle in his stomach. Observer status was barely a step above being completely ignored. It meant humanity could send representatives to watch galactic politics unfold, but they would have no say in decisions that might affect their world or their future. Commander, Zithkar's voice rang out across the chamber one final time. Let this serve as a lesson to all primitive species who dare to reach beyond their proper place. The galaxy belongs to those strong enough to claim it and wise enough to govern it. Humans are neither. As the session concluded and the alien delegates began to file out, Kyle stood in the center of the chamber with his companions, the weight of failure heavy on his shoulders. The message was clear. Humanity was considered the youngest, weakest, and most insignificant species in the galaxy. 3 months had passed since the humiliating rejection at the Galactic Council, and Kyle Morrison sat in his cramped office aboard Kepler Station, staring at reports that made his blood run cold. The neutral trading post orbited a dead world. At the edge of civilized space, serving as humanity's only diplomatic outpost in the galaxy. The station buzzed with alien traders and diplomats, but none of them paid any attention to the human embassy. Tucked away in the lower levels, the communication terminal on his desk chimed with an incoming priority transmission from Earth. Kyle activated the secure channel, and the holographic image of Admiral Jake Rodriguez materialized above the projector. The Admiral's weathered face showed signs of stress that had not been there during their last conversation. Kyle, we have a problem, Rodriguez said without preamble. Our deep space monitoring stations have detected unusual Vortanian fleet movements. Near the outer rim, intelligence suggests they're not just conducting routine patrols. Kyle leaned forward in his chair. What kind of movements are we talking about, Admiral? Rodriguez's expression grew grimmer. 15 heavy cruisers, 8 battle carriers, and at least 3 dreadnoughts have been repositioning themselves along our colonial borders. Communications intercepts suggest they're planning something big, and early reports indicate Earth is their primary target. The words hit Kyle like a physical blow. After the Council's rejection, he had feared something like this might happen. The galaxy's major powers had made it clear they viewed humanity as insignificant, but insignificant did not mean safe. In galactic politics, weak species were often seen as easy targets for expansion or exploitation. Do we have any concrete intelligence on their intentions? Kyle asked, though he dreaded the answer. Rodriguez nodded grimly. We intercepted a coded transmission between Commander Zithkar and his fleet captains. The translation is still being verified, but the general message was clear. They view us as a potential slave species, easy to conquer and useful for manual labor in their mining operations. Kyle felt his stomach turn. The Vortanians were known throughout the galaxy for their use of conquered species as workers in dangerous environments. Their crystalline physiology made them unsuited for many types of physical labor, so they relied on subjugated biological species to do the work their bodies could not handle. The communication was interrupted by an urgent alert. From the station's traffic control, Captain Amy Walsh of the research vessel UHS Discovery was requesting emergency docking clearance. Kyle watched through his office viewport as the small Earth ship limped toward the station, its hull scarred by energy weapon impacts. 20 minutes later, Captain Walsh sat across from Kyle's desk, her uniform torn and her face pale with exhaustion. She had been conducting a routine survey mission near the mining colony of New Texas when her ship encountered a Vortanian patrol. They came out of nowhere, Walsh reported, her voice steady despite the obvious trauma she had endured. A massive dreadnought, easily 10 times the size of my ship. The commander didn't even bother with standard hailing protocols. He just opened a channel and started talking. Kyle poured her a cup of coffee from his personal supply, one of the few luxuries he allowed himself on the remote station. What did he say? Walsh's hands shook slightly as she lifted the cup. He said that humanity had 72 hours to surrender all our colonies to Vortanian control. He claimed that our species would serve as their workforce in the outer systems and that resistance would result in complete extermination. The room fell silent except for the hum of the station's life support systems. Kyle felt the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders like a lead blanket. As humanity's senior diplomatic representative in galactic space, he was the first line of communication between Earth and potential threats. Did he specify which colonies? Kyle asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. All of them, Walsh replied. New Texas Haven Pioneer Station, the research outposts on Kepler 442b, everything. He made it clear that humanity would either submit willingly or be forced into submission. Kyle re-established contact with Admiral Rodriguez, sharing Walsh's report through the encrypted channel. The Admiral's face grew darker with each detail. This is exactly what we feared might happen after the Council rejection, Rodriguez said. The major powers see us as fair game now that we've been officially classified as a minor species with no political protection. On Earth, the news of the Vortanian ultimatum sent shockwaves through the government and military leadership. President Nathan Cole convened an emergency session with the Joint Chiefs of Staff in the secure bunker beneath the Pentagon. The meeting room's walls displayed tactical readouts, showing the positions of human colonies and the approaching alien fleets. General Patricia Brooks, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, laid out their defensive options with brutal honesty. Mr. President, we have to face reality. Our most advanced warships are armed with kinetic weapons and fusion missiles. The Vortanians have energy shields that can absorb nuclear-level impacts, weapons that can crack planetary crusts and faster than light, capability that outclasses our best ships by a factor of 10. President Cole studied the tactical displays with growing despair. What about evacuation? Can we get our people out of the threatened colonies? Not in 72 hours, Brooks replied. We have maybe 3 million civilians spread across 15 different worlds. Our transport capacity could move perhaps 10% of them in the time we have available. Secretary of Defense Carol Martinez spoke up from her position at the conference table. What about negotiation? Maybe we can find some common ground, offer them something they want in exchange for leaving our people alone. Admiral Rodriguez, participating via secure link from his flagship, shook his head. Ma'am, based on our intelligence intercepts, they don't want to negotiate. They want slaves, and they view humans as perfect for the role. We're the right size for their mining equipment. We can survive in a variety of atmospheric conditions, and they consider us intelligent enough to follow complex orders but too weak to pose any threat. The meeting continued for hours as military leaders and government officials tried to find some solution to an impossible situation. Every scenario they developed ended with the same conclusion. Humanity simply did not have the military capability to resist a determined Vortanian assault. Meanwhile, back on Kepler Station, Kyle received additional reports from human colonies. Throughout the frontier, Vortanian ships had appeared in orbit around every major human settlement, broadcasting the same message that Captain Walsh had received. The aliens were not bluffing or posturing. They had positioned their fleets for immediate conquest. The 72-hour countdown had begun, and as each hour passed, it became increasingly clear that humanity faced two equally terrible choices: submit to slavery or face complete annihilation. The species that had mocked them at the Galactic Council was now prepared to prove that their contempt had been justified all along. As Kyle watched alien ships moving through the space around Kepler Station, he could not shake the feeling that this was exactly what the galaxy's major powers had intended all along. By denying humanity any political protection, they had essentially painted a target on every human world. The message was clear: in galactic politics, strength was the only currency that mattered, and humanity had just been proven to have none. Deep beneath the surface of Luna, in chambers carved from solid rock and shielded by layers of metal and concrete, Fleet Admiral Christopher Hayes stood before a massive holographic display that showed the true scope of humanity's preparations. The underground facility stretched for kilometers in every direction, its corridors bustling with technicians and officers who moved with the quiet urgency of people engaged in work that could determine the fate of their entire species. The facility was known only as Site 7 to the few hundred people with clearance to know of its existence. Even President Cole knew only that it was a classified research installation working on advanced defensive technologies. The truth was far more complex and far more dangerous than anyone in the civilian government could have imagined. Dr. Elena Martinez approached the Admiral with a data tablet in her hands and excitement barely contained in her voice. Sir, the final tests are complete. All systems are operational and ready for deployment. Operation Silent Thunder is a go. Hayes nodded as he studied the holographic displays surrounding them. The images showed technical specifications for weapons and ships that officially did not exist, manufactured in facilities that appeared on no government records, using technologies that humanity was supposed to be decades away from developing. Show me the current fleet status, Hayes ordered. The hologram shifted to display a three-dimensional map of the solar system. Dozens of red dots appeared in the asteroid belt, each one representing a ship that had been built in secret over the past 20 years. More dots appeared near Jupiter's moons, around Saturn's rings, and in the dark spaces between planets where human civilization was not supposed to have any presence. Commander Ryan Davis stepped forward from his position at a nearby console. Admiral, we have 237 vessels ready for immediate deployment. The backbone of the fleet consists of 58 Retribution-class battleships, each one equipped with adaptive shielding systems reverse-engineered from Luminary energy technology. Our weapon systems incorporate Vortanian crystal resonance principles, but we've improved the power output by 40%. Hayes allowed himself a small smile. And the heavy units? 12 Vengeance-class dreadnoughts. Sir, each one is larger and more heavily armed than anything in the Vortanian fleet. We've also completed construction on the supercarriers, each capable of deploying 200 fighter craft equipped with quantum torpedo systems. The Admiral walked over to another display that showed technical readouts he had memorized years ago but still found impressive. Dr. Martinez, explain to me again how we achieved all this without the galaxy noticing. Martinez pulled up a series of historical documents on her tablet. It began 53 years ago with the Henderson incident. When Captain Bill Henderson's survey ship was attacked by pirates near the Vega system, we recovered wreckage from both his ship and the alien vessels that destroyed it. That wreckage contained our first samples of advanced technology. She gestured to a timeline that appeared in the hologram. Over the following decades, we established a network of intelligence operatives throughout galactic space. They posed as traders, researchers, and diplomatic staff, but their real mission was to gather technological samples and data from every major civilization. Hayes remembered the early days of the program, when he had been a young lieutenant assigned to what was then called the Technology Assessment Division. The galaxy's arrogance worked in our favor. They were so convinced of our primitive nature that they never bothered to monitor our activities carefully. Exactly, Martinez continued. When the Krexthal demonstrated their new shield technology at the trade exposition on Rigel Station, our operative Dr. Susan Blake was there with equipment that could analyze and record the energy patterns. When the Sorok unveiled their improved FTL drives, Lieutenant Colonel Mark Johnson was able to obtain detailed scans during a diplomatic reception. Commander Davis brought up another display showing manufacturing facilities hidden throughout the solar system. The beauty of the operation was that we never tried to steal complete technologies. Instead, we gathered small pieces from dozens of different sources and used human ingenuity to combine them in ways their original creators never imagined. Hayes nodded approvingly. The Vortanians perfected crystal-based energy weapons, but they never thought to combine them with human computer targeting systems. The Luminari developed incredible shield technology, but they never considered integrating it with kinetic barrier systems. Each species in the galaxy became specialists in narrow fields, but humans learned to be generalists who could take the best from everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Maya Thompson approached from the psychological warfare section of the facility. Admiral, our analysis of alien tactical doctrines is complete. Every major species in the galaxy has developed critical weaknesses in their strategic thinking based on their cultural assumptions. She activated a presentation that showed behavioral profiles for each of the major galactic powers. The Vortanians believe that technological superiority guarantees victory, so they never developed flexible tactical doctrines. The Krexthal are hive-minded, which makes them predictable once you understand their decision-making patterns. The Luminari have become so focused on energy-based warfare that they're vulnerable to kinetic attacks. The Sorok rely on brute force and intimidation, making them susceptible to misdirection and psychological manipulation. Hayes studied the profiles with interest, and they all share one critical flaw. Yes, sir, Thompson replied. They all consistently underestimate opponents they consider technologically or culturally inferior. It's a blind spot that runs so deep in galactic civilization that none of them even recognize it as a weakness. The Admiral walked over to a secure communication terminal and opened a channel to the hidden shipyards scattered throughout the solar system. One by one, ship commanders reported their readiness status. Captain Alex Porter of the UHS Retribution reported all weapon systems operational and crew at battle stations. Captain Julie Barnes of the UHS Justice confirmed that her ship's new cloaking systems were functioning perfectly. Captain Danny Foster of the UHS Vengeance announced that his dreadnought's quantum torpedo tubes were loaded and ready. Dr. Martinez pulled up the final piece of information that Hayes needed to see. Sir, our deep space monitoring network has tracked the Vortanian fleet movements with perfect accuracy. They're following exactly the approach patterns that our tactical computers predicted. Their overconfidence is making them predictable. Hayes looked around the command center at the faces of the men and women who had dedicated their careers to this moment. Most of them had spent years living double lives, publicly working on civilian projects while secretly developing the most advanced military technology in galactic history. "Ladies and gentlemen," Hayes announced, his voice carrying clearly through the facility's communication system, "for 50 years we have prepared for this day. The galaxy has mocked us, dismissed us, and now threatened us with slavery or extinction. They believe we are weak because we allow them to see only what we choose to show them." He gestured to the holographic displays showing the hidden fleet. "In 6 hours, the Vortanian ultimatum expires. They expect us to surrender or die. Instead, they're going to learn that humanity has never been the primitive species they believed us to be. We have watched, we have learned, and we have prepared. Now it's time to show the galaxy what happens when you threaten the human race." Throughout the facility, alarms began sounding as the fleet prepared for deployment. In hidden bases across the solar system, ships that had never been seen by alien eyes began powering up their engines and weapon systems. The galaxy was about to discover that humanity had been playing a very different game than anyone realized. The 72-hour ultimatum had expired exactly 18 minutes ago, and Commander Zithkar felt a deep satisfaction as he watched his fleet move toward human space. From the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Crystalline Dominance, he could see the other vessels of his conquest fleet spread out in perfect formation. 15 heavy cruisers flanked his position, their crystal hulls gleaming with internal energy patterns that showed their weapons were charged and ready. Behind them came the troop transports, specially modified to carry the harvesting equipment, and processing centers that would transform human colonies into efficient labor camps. Zithkar had overseen similar operations against primitive species throughout the galaxy, and he expected this conquest to be completed within days rather than weeks. "Status report," he commanded, his forearms manipulating the crystalline control. Interfaces with practiced ease, Sub-Commander Velthek approached from the tactical station, his smaller frame showing the deference appropriate to his lower rank. "Sir, all ships report ready for combat operations. The human colonies show no signs of defensive preparations. Our sensors detect only minimal space traffic, mostly civilian vessels attempting to flee the area." Zithkar's crystalline features twisted into what might have been a smile. "As expected. These primitives lack both the courage and the capability to resist a proper military force." "Have any human government representatives attempted to negotiate?" "Negative, sir. Communications from Earth ceased 12 hours ago. Intelligence suggests their leadership is in complete disarray." The commander settled back into his command throne, savoring the moment. The conquest of humanity would bring significant prestige within the Vortanian Empire, and the slave labor from their colonies would fuel expansion projects for decades to come. More importantly, it would send a clear message to other primitive species about the consequences of reaching beyond their proper place in galactic civilization. "Open a general broadcast on all frequencies," Zithkar ordered. "Let the humans hear their fate." The communication system activated, sending his words across space to every human settlement and ship within range. "Pathetic humans, your silence confirms your cowardice. We will harvest your worlds and put your species to work in our mining operations. Those who cooperate will be allowed to live. Those who resist will be eliminated as examples to the others." His transmission was still echoing through space when the first anomalous readings appeared on his sensor displays. Sub-Commander Velthek's voice carried a note of confusion as he reported from the tactical station. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures throughout the local system. The readings don't match any known human technology." Zithkar's 4 eyes focused on the display screens around his command position. "Explain these readings." "Unknown, sir. The energy patterns are consistent with advanced cloaking systems, but humans are not supposed to possess such technology. The signatures are appearing on all sides of our formation." Before Zithkar could respond, the space around his fleet began to shimmer and distort. Reality seemed to bend and twist as massive shapes materialized from nothingness, their hulls becoming visible as cloaking fields deactivated. The commander stared in disbelief as human warships appeared throughout his formation, Their weapons already trained on his vessels. The ships that revealed themselves bore no resemblance to the primitive craft that Vortanian intelligence had catalogued over the decades. These vessels were sleek and deadly, their hulls covered in armor that seemed to absorb and redirect energy rather than simply deflecting it. Weapon systems that had never appeared in any human design manual tracked his ships with predatory precision. Captain. Alex Porter's voice cut through the silence on all communication frequencies. Transmitted from the bridge of the UHS Retribution. This is the Human Defense Fleet. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from our territory. Zithkar felt something cold settle in his primary stomach as his tactical computers analyzed the ships surrounding his fleet. The energy readings were impossible. These vessels were generating power levels that exceeded anything in the Vortanian arsenal, and their weapon signatures suggested technology that was decades ahead of what humans were supposed to possess. How many ships? He demanded. His voice cracking slightly. Commander Velthek's hands trembled as he read from his instruments. Sir, we count over 200 vessels. The largest ones are generating energy signatures 40% higher than our own dreadnoughts. Their weapon systems are unknown configurations, but the computer estimates their firepower at 3 times our maximum output. The 30 seconds expired with mechanical precision. From the flagship UHS Vengeance, Admiral Jake Rodriguez opened a communication channel that reached every ship in both fleets. Commander Zithkar, you have threatened our people with slavery and extinction. You have dismissed us as primitive and weak. You are about to learn the consequences of underestimating humanity. Rodriguez's next words would be remembered throughout galactic history. All ships, weapons free. Show them what happens when you threaten the human race. The battle began instantly and proceeded with devastating efficiency. Human ships moved through space with a precision and coordination that baffled the Vortanian commanders. Their formations flowed like liquid mercury, each vessel supporting the others in patterns that seemed to anticipate enemy movements before they occurred. The first volley of human weapons fire shattered the crystalline dominances. Forward shields like glass. Zithkar watched in horror as energy beams that should not have existed cut through his ship's armor as if it were paper. Around him, the bridge crew screamed warnings about cascade failures and critical system damage. Return fire! Zithkar shouted, but his weapons officers were already discovering the futility of their situation. Vortanian energy blasts struck human shields and simply vanished, absorbed by defensive systems that operated on principles their computers could not analyze. The few shots that penetrated were deflected by armor that seemed to adapt and strengthen. Under attack. Captain Julie Barnes, commanding the UHS, reported to Admiral Rodriguez from her position near the enemy troop transports. Admiral, enemy formations are breaking apart. They're attempting to retreat, but our tactical computers have predicted their escape vectors. Shall we pursue? Negative, Rodriguez replied. Let some of them escape. The galaxy needs to know what happened here. Throughout the battle, human ships demonstrated capabilities that violated everything the Vortanians thought they knew about warfare. The UHS Retribution moved through enemy formations using what appeared to be short-range teleportation technology. The U's Vengeance fired weapons that seemed to bend space itself, striking targets that should have been protected by intervening obstacles. Within minutes, the mighty Vortanian conquest fleet was either destroyed or fleeing in complete disarray. Zithkar's flagship limped away from the battle with half its systems offline and most of its crew dead or wounded. Behind him, the wreckage of 15 heavy cruisers drifted in the void, their crystalline hulls cracked and dark as the surviving Vortanian ships jumped to FTL speed, carrying news of their defeat back to the Empire. Admiral Rodriguez stood on the bridge of his flagship and surveyed the battlefield. The operation had proceeded exactly as their computers had predicted. Human casualties were 0, enemy casualties were catastrophic, and the psychological impact would reverberate throughout galactic civilization. Captain Porter's voice came through the communication system from his position near the debris field. Admiral, we're detecting automated distress beacons from the enemy wrecks. Should we render assistance? Rodriguez considered the question for a moment before responding. Negative. Let them drift. The galaxy needs to see the price of threatening humanity. The first phase of humanity's revelation was complete. Word of the impossible victory would spread through galactic communication networks within hours, carried by the surviving Vortanian ships and the automated monitoring systems that every major power maintained. Throughout space, the species that had mocked humans as primitive were about to learn that they had been catastrophically wrong about everything. News of humanity's impossible victory over the Vortanian fleet spread through galactic communication networks like wildfire, carried by quantum transmissions that reached every corner of civilized space within hours. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders stared at tactical reports that made no sense according to everything they thought they knew about human capabilities. The emergency session of the Galactic Council convened in record time, with representatives from every major species, demanding explanations for what their intelligence services were calling the most shocking military upset in galactic history. The same chamber where humanity had been mocked and dismissed 3 months earlier now buzzed with fear and confusion as holographic displays showed the wreckage of Commander Zithkar's fleet. Queen Vexandra's compound eyes reflected the light from the tactical displays as she studied the battle footage with growing disbelief. This is impossible. Our intelligence reports clearly indicated that human military technology was centuries behind our own. How could primitive fusion-powered vessels destroy Vortanian crystal ships? Bright star of ancient wisdom pulsed with colors that conveyed deep concern and confusion. The energy signatures in these recordings do not match any known human technology. These weapons and defensive systems operate on principles that should be beyond their understanding. General Lectar's reptilian features twisted into a snarl of frustration. Someone has been feeding us false intelligence for decades. No species develops this level of military capability overnight. Before the debate could continue, new alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. The Council's long-range sensors were detecting massive energy signatures approaching from multiple vectors. Fleet Admiral Christopher Hayes' voice echoed through the chamber's communication system, transmitted from his flagship as it materialized in orbit around the Council world. Honored representatives of the Galactic Council, this is Fleet Admiral Hayes of the Human Defense Force. We request permission to address your assembly. The president of the Galactic Council, the ethereal being who had delivered humanity's rejection months earlier, granted permission with obvious reluctance. On the viewing screens around the chamber, the assembled aliens could see human ships taking positions around their world. The vessels were unlike anything in their databases, sleek and deadly machines that radiated power far beyond anything they had believed possible. Kyle Morrison entered the chamber once again, but this time his diplomatic uniform bore the insignia of a full ambassador, and his bearing carried the confidence of a representative whose species had just demonstrated its true strength. Behind him walked Admiral Rodriguez and Dr. Martinez, their presence serving as living proof of humanity's hidden capabilities. Kyle moved to the center of the chamber, the same spot where he had been humiliated 3 months earlier. This time, the assembled representatives watched him in complete silence, their earlier mockery replaced by wary attention. 3 months ago, you rejected humanity's request for membership in this federation. Kyle began, his voice carrying clearly. Through the chamber's translation systems, you called us primitive, weak, and insignificant. You dismissed our technology as backward and our civilization as chaotic. Today, we return to offer you a different perspective. Admiral Rodriguez stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed the current positions of human fleets throughout the galaxy. Red dots appeared around every major alien homeworld, indicating that human ships had somehow achieved simultaneous deployment across thousands of light-years of space. At this moment, Rodriguez announced, human fleets are in position around the capital worlds of every major galactic power. We are not here as conquerors, but we want you to understand that the balance of power in this galaxy has fundamentally shifted. Dr. Martinez activated another display showing technical specifications that made the assembled aliens gasp in recognition. For 50 years, we have been observing and learning from your technologies. Every diplomatic exchange, every trade mission, every cultural visit was an opportunity for us to study and improve upon your innovations. The revelation struck the chamber like a physical blow. Commander Zithkar, present via holographic projection from his damaged flagship, finally understood the scope of humanity's deception. You have been spying on us for decades, stealing our technology and using it against us. Kyle's expression remained calm as he responded. We have been surviving. When first contact revealed that the galaxy was filled with species far more advanced than ourselves, we faced a choice. We could remain primitives at the mercy of our betters, or we could learn to compete on equal terms. Captain Julie Barnes' voice came through the communication system from her position in orbit around the Krexthal homeworld. Admiral, the insectoid fleet has surrendered without firing a shot. They're requesting immediate negotiation of terms. Similar reports flooded in from human commanders throughout the galaxy. The psychological impact of humanity's revealed power was proving even more devastating than their military capabilities. Species that had considered themselves superior were now paralyzed by the realization that they had been fundamentally wrong about everything. General Vectar stood from his heated seat, his massive frame shaking with rage. You expect us to simply accept this humiliation? The Sorok Empire will never bow to a species of lying primitives. Admiral Rodriguez's response was immediate and final. General, your Empire's battle fleet surrendered to Captain Danny Foster 20 minutes ago. Your homeworld's orbital defenses have been disabled, and your government has already transmitted terms of unconditional surrender. The Sorok Empire as an independent entity no longer exists. The chamber fell into stunned silence as the implications became clear. In less than 6 hours, humanity had not only revealed its true military power, but had effectively conquered or neutralized every major galactic civilization without firing more than a few shots. Kyle walked closer to the assembled representatives, his voice taking on a tone of reasonable authority. We did not seek this conflict. You forced it upon us when you threatened our people with slavery and extinction. Now you will learn to coexist with humanity as equals, or you will discover that our capacity for warfare extends far beyond what you witnessed today. The president of the Galactic Council spoke in tones that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. What are your terms, humans? Kyle smiled, the expression carrying none of the diplomatic pleasantries that had characterized his previous visit. The Galactic Federation will be restructured as a true alliance of equal partners. All species will have an equal voice in galactic affairs, regardless of their age or technological development. The practice of enslaving or exploiting weaker civilizations will end immediately. He gestured to the tactical displays showing human fleets. Humanity will serve as the Federation's military protector, ensuring that no species can threaten another with conquest or extermination. In return, we expect full cooperation in establishing trade relationships, cultural exchanges, and scientific collaboration. Ambassador Morrison's final words echoed through the chamber with quiet authority. The vote on these terms will be unanimous, or there will be no Federation left to vote in. The galaxy has spent too long under the rule of species who believe that might makes right. Today begins a new era where strength serves justice rather than conquest. One by one, the representatives of the galaxy's great powers cast their votes in favor of humanity's proposal. The species that had mocked humans as primitive sheep were now looking to them for leadership and protection, their previous arrogance replaced by fearful respect. Fleet Admiral Hayes' final transmission from his flagship captured the moment perfectly. They thought we were easy prey to be herded and slaughtered. They learned too late that humanity has never been prey. We are, and always have been, the apex predators of this galaxy. They mocked us until our fleet showed up for total annihilation. Now the galaxy will never underestimate humanity again. The age of human dominance had begun, forged not through unprovoked aggression, but through the complete destruction of those foolish enough to threaten the species that had quietly become the most dangerous force in galactic civilization. The mockery had ended, and humanity's true reign was just beginning.